What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Phase 6, your source for music, business, motivation, and support. It's your boy, Sirr Love, and here's another episode of Ask Sirr Love, right? Right here in Ask Sirr Love, I answer questions that you guys submit. And this person here, Luke Roberts, sent me a question about side A and side B. I replied to Luke and sent Luke a link to Wikipedia. The original question had something to do with, hey, what's the difference between, or can you explain, side A and side B and what that means in music? And I sent him a link to Wikipedia. This particular link here, any of you guys that have this question, you can come here to learn more about it. It really breaks it down. It gives you the science. It gives you everything you need to know. But I'm going to give it to you in a more candid, easier to understand way. But his question is, phase V1, I think he meant VI. I have a question. Can you please do a YouTube video and do an explanation or example on what does a side A and what does side B mean? I did look up the Wikipedia. It does kind of make sense, but on the other hand, it doesn't make sense. So I need you to explain this. What does side A and what does side B mean on the next Phase 6 YouTube channel? Well, I'm going to go ahead and do that for you, no problem. So this is a very easy thing to break down, but I want to give you the history and the context. It'll make you understand it a lot better. All right. So a long time ago, we used to use vinyl. We used to use, records, right, to make music, right? Here's an example, right? Records, right? And before this, let's not even go before this. Let's just start at vinyl, right? Vinyl records, all right? When vinyl records came out back in that time frame, it was very similar to today, where singles were driving. Well, with the LP, before we did the LP, which is the long play version, which is the bigger vinyl that we're seeing, we had the 45s, which were smaller ones. But anyway, let me not do all that. All right. Side A and side B. Let me just give it to you straight up. A long time ago, when we did music, you were able to put music on both sides of the vinyl. All right. And so since you could put music on both sides of the vinyl, typically the decision on what went on what side or the other side was something that was debated at the label, right? What ended up being the norm is that on one side, you have kind of what we call the radio version today, the version that is fit for a certain time frame. It's the song that the label is really supportive of, that they're behind. When you pull, the vinyl out of the case, this is the side they want you to put it on. They want to put all the hits, all the best records on this side of the vinyl, right? But culturally, there may be nuances that the radio or that, the label may not be astute to or catching. And so on the other side, you'd have different versions. So a long time ago, a record may be 8 minutes long, 12 minutes long, because bands actually play music. So the bands will turn around and just jam out on a record, right? And the label didn't want to sell that in the same space that they sold the other records on, right? Plus, there's a limited space that you can have on any one side of the CD. So the vinyl, so how do you decide what goes on what side, right? So a long time ago, there was side A, side B. Side A was typically the more polished, the more put together, the more presentable records, the best records. Side B was either records that had a whole lot of jam sessions on it, or there were records that the label may not have felt were the strongest examples of the artist, or maybe it's a record that the artist really liked, the label didn't like, but they put it on there. Whatever that negotiation came out to be, side B was a non-polished, non-commercial side, typically. There were some albums where side A and side B were equal in quality, but that's typically what we saw. Now, when we moved from vinyl and we got to tape and we started getting to other formats, this concept of side A and side B started disappearing, because on a cassette, you didn't have that same type of energy, right? You technically did, because you can have the tape in and you can flip it over in it, but you started to lose the energy of side A and side B over time, especially when you went to CDs and then you get to streaming, things of that nature. Why is it somewhat still relevant? Well, it's still somewhat still relevant because of these guys, DJs, right? My man's right here spinning with some vinyl, right? DJs are still bringing out those records, and they're still cutting to those records, whether you're using, actual, records, or you're using something more modern, like what you're seeing right here, or right here. But regardless of what you're using, right, vinyl records have come back into place, and there's a new purpose for side A, side B. A lot of the great samples in hip hop come from the side B, right? Because, like I said, people are jamming out to the music, so there's less words to interrupt you when you're trying to sample. You also see that in hip hop culture, because in hip hop culture, initially there was no beat programming when hip hop first started. And beat programming is when you put the boom and the clap and the whatever into the beat. There was no beat programming. So what they did is they found a section of a song where there was no singing, and the DJ's job was to loop it. So he would have to play the record on, he'd have the same record on two turntables, and he would play the song on here and then splice over and start it over at the exact same clip here, and splice over and start it over at the exact same clip there. And then an MC would get on there and rap on top of it. And that hip hop as a whole has kind of kept that culture alive. And then that's why you see the sampling. That's why you see all these different things over time, which kept the idea of side A and side B relevant. But is there anything that you need to know from a legal perspective about side A, side B? No. Is there anything that you need to know from a streaming perspective about side A, side B? No. Are there some nuances in some of those categories that would be notable and worth mentioning if you had a contract that brought them up? But for the most part, it's just, history. It's music, history, and it was the way that we categorized which records, got the most awareness or visual representation on the physical device itself. So I hope that was helpful. Hope that was helpful. I'm Sirr Love. I don't know everything. I know a lot about a little and a little bit about a lot. I'm always trying to give you guys everything that I got right here on Phase 6, and there's side A, side B broken down. I'm out.